this team is here to help steer me. I just have to provide perspective and input and point of view and that sort of thing, goals, ambitions, fears, frustrations. And then I love it. It's if that's what I could spend all my time doing, that's what I would do.
Welcome to the Agency Profit Podcast, a show dedicated to going deep space on agency operations, which is just as nerdy as it sounds. I'm your host, Marcel Petitpoff. I'm the CEO of Parakeeto, a firm that helps digital and creative agencies measure and improve their profitability. Join me as I interview some of the smartest thought leaders and agency owners in our space and go deep into operations, metrics, and all the other things you need to get right so you can spend less time worrying about operations and more time executing on your vision.
Hello and welcome back to the Agency Profit Podcast. I am Carson Pierce, here again for one of my own solo ones. I know we've got all kinds of hosts happening right now, but today you get me, and I am joined by Eric Brown from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Welcome, Eric.
Thanks, Carson. Appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, this is exciting. We've got a really relevant topic, I think, and you are the right person to be talking about it. So before we get into it, why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are and a little bit more about Blood, Sweat, and Tears?
Yeah. Eric Brown, co-founder of Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Atlanta. I've been in Atlanta my whole life. And, we were just talking a little bit about, y'all getting some of our weather up there, which is unfortunate. But, I've been in the agency space for over 20 years now. Both being in-house, leading growth for agencies, and then spending the bulk of my career consulting into agencies specifically related to growth. And when Nora Denuzzo and I started Blood, Sweat, and Tears 3 years ago next month, we recognized that most of the agencies that we were interfacing with were lacking two specific things: a clear growth strategy and the dedicated resources to execute that strategy. And we really just had a passion and desire and a background in solving for that, and wanted to bring that capability to other agency founders and leaders.
Very cool. And I feel like you're coming in at the right time with this kind of an offering, because the last few years have been a bit rough for a lot of agencies, especially like the last, I'll say, year or two. And there's lots of reasons for that. But usually when we're trying to diagnose, well, what's going on? What can you do to fix it? A lot of the times, the culprit is we don't have enough work. We don't have enough, business in the pipeline, whether that's to maintain what they currently have. And we'll talk about that later, or to grow the business at all. So, let's just dive right into that. I see it all over the place. So many agencies are struggling with it. What do we do about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Carson. And I think my belief is that it has to start with agencies choosing to own growth as a function within the agency. We talk about planning and installing growth operations for agencies, for agency leadership, because candidly, most agencies are not started because of an expertise in growth. It's not where they came from. It's not what they want to do. It's not it's not natural for most of the team. And the irony is, many agency owners came from shops in which, based on their skill set, they kind of had work dropped on their desk. And so when they took their skill set out to run another agency, they oftentimes left with, maybe a piece of business or two, and some relationships that have enabled them to grow. And kind of the stereotype or the common story is, agency skill set leaves, starts their own agency. They bring that piece of business, some relationships. They grow to several $1 million, if not $5 or so million over 3 to 5 years. And that's when we start to see some friction. And the friction there is most commonly, they've picked all of the low-hanging fruit off the tree, and that low-hanging fruit is the relationships, and like the relationships that they have, that they can access, that they can transfer into revenue, whether that was unsold relationships or tracking somebody from brand A to brand B and picking up business there. And all the meanwhile, costs are rising. I know we'll talk about that a little bit more later, Carson, when we talk about profit and margins and that sort of thing. But again, so we get back to the reality that growth is not a function within agencies. It's not a common skill set. It's not what we understand or know or again want to do. And then when we get to that point, when we're several years in and the margins start to become thinner, the friction becomes high for those reasons. One, our ego and our historicals over the past few years have told us that we can do it, that we've done something, that we've sold things, that we've driven revenue. And so there's almost a false sense of confidence in like the quote unquote system that we've been running off of. But we know something needs to change. And so there's this like natural contrast to what has worked, but then what we know to be true. And also because margins have become thinner, because we oftentimes wait to solve the problem until it becomes bad, margin oftentimes doesn't facilitate the investment in growth. And so those are the challenges that we see commonly. The answer is growth as a function, and we'll talk more about what that function is. But it's agencies needing to come to terms with like, hey, like we want this to be a function or our operations within this business that is repeatable, forecastable, maybe scalable, but it's not happenstance and it's not pure luck.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, the whole positioning for Parakeeto is around the idea that agency owners didn't sign up to do their financial, they didn't sign up to be a CFO. They didn't sign up to look at P&Ls. And so we take that on. And I strongly agree. It's the same on the, the new business side of things. Most agency owners didn't sign up to become salespeople and go chasing work all the time. They just want to do good work. So very, very similar problems between us. I don't know which one agency operators or owners like least, looking at financials or doing sales. But either way,
I think we're probably sitting pretty close together in that hierarchy of preference.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. So based on that, then you've got 4 pillars that you like to work from to introduce this function into the agency. Talk about those 4 pillars.
Yeah. So the pillars are positioning, messaging, tactics, and growth operations. And that's like the functional execution of what we're going to talk about. We talk about having to start with strategy. I alluded to that earlier. We have to have a strategy. We have to have a directive to take the business from where we are now to some state in the future. And that state is most oftentimes measured by revenue. Again, you and I can talk a little bit more about like what that measure should be. There should be some profitability in there as well, certainly. But the common easiest objective or measure is revenue. And so we want to identify a revenue objective at a point in the future, more than 12 months away. And ideally, we're looking at 3 to 5 years out, because we want to plan for the future, and then we want to be able to reverse engineer down to what we're doing in yearly chunks. And so the strategy is what's going to dictate how we get there. And the reality is, there's an overwhelming similarity in a lot of agencies. There are very clear differences. The why behind growth. If we want to go from a $5 million shop to our aspirations to be a $15 million shop in whatever period of time that is, why? Is that because that's the candidly the amount of income that you want to be able to produce as an owner or ownership or leadership group? Is it because you want to run a specific type of shop? Is it because you want to be able to do a specific type of work? We've often had conversations with owners where they've said like, oh, we want to grow by this amount. And then when we go through some of our process, we then ask is is what it's going to take to be that, oftentimes that number, that size of shop defined by revenue. Is this the type of organization that you really want to be running? And they oftentimes say no. And it's just like, hey, we had this number in mind. But again, Carson, the other point that we'll come back to is profit. You can do a lot of things. The numbers shift pretty significantly when you're talking about profit. Even it's like what you're bringing home as the founder, as the business owner, what your leadership team can do. So we want to start with strategy, and then within strategy we have positioning, messaging, and tactics. And it has to start with positioning. Your positioning is the foundation of our deployment into the marketplace. And what that means is we have to have clear alignment between the things that we do and the people that buy the things that we do. So the terms I'll use there are our ICP, which is our ideal client profile, and then stakeholders. So stakeholders are either the decision makers or the influencers of those decisions. It's kind of like the buying committee, but it's within, if we're an agency and we're targeting brands, that might be the CMO, that might be a VP brand, whatever that is. But so our positioning is the articulation between what it is that we do and the business challenge that those stakeholders carry. The thing I like to articulate is, like our buyers, our stakeholders, our decision makers, they're just like you and I. They're sitting at a desk in front of a computer with a family behind them, with a house, with all of these problems that they're trying to wade through. They have a life, they have responsibilities, and they're running their business is important to them. And they depend on strategic partners that can solve these problems for them. Because just like we talked about with agency owners not having expertise in all areas, our clients, our potential clients aren't experts in all of these areas. And so they're looking for an expert to help them solve the problems that they have. And so that's the role of the positioning. Now, the messaging is the deployment of that. It's like, how are we articulating that positioning between us and our stakeholders within our Right to Win ICP? The tactics are the channels that we leverage in order to deploy that message. We want our message to be consistent. We want it to resonate, but then we need to deploy it in the right ways. And Carson, this is the part of some of the exercises that we do that really starts to be fun, because we get to see this transformation in perspective on growth of. And we can talk a little bit more about process, but by this point in our process, we've nailed down some numbers. We've talked about what it's going to take, and the tactics is how we get to show up. Like you and I here on this podcast. You and I are on this podcast because a podcast works well for you. It works well for Parakeeto, and you wouldn't be doing this. I'm assuming you wouldn't be doing this if you absolutely hated doing it. It's similar for me. Podcasting is natural. I enjoy talking. I enjoy, conversing with others. So we get to choose the channels that we show up in because they have to be, it's imperative that they are authentic to us, to our agency, our brand, and they're authentic to our stakeholder. Like, yes, we get to choose what we do, but it also needs to resonate. Like we can't choose like, we're going to, start doing smoke signals because I've always wanted to learn how to do smoke signals. And I think that's going to be, obviously that's a bit silly. But we need to have done the research to understand how our stakeholder consumes information, where they are, what type of information matters, a lot of that kind of psychographic type of work. But we get to choose the channels that we show up in, and those are our tactics. The other thing that's imperative about tactics is we apply tactics at each stage of the funnel. So we treat the funnel like it's a real thing. We have the top, middle, and bottom of the funnel. Top being awareness, middle being consideration, bottom being conversion. And we need to do things that flow together across each stage of the funnel. And the imperative there is it all has to be to one ICP. And this is where we oftentimes get pushback from our clients. And we can choose to double click on that if we want to or not. But for the sake of getting through these 4 pillars, I'll just say that has to be to one ICP, because we can't be doing a top of funnel tactic for FinServe and a bottom of funnel tactic for CPG and expect those to connect, because those are 2 different stakeholders. They're obviously 2 different industries, 2 different stakeholders, different business challenges, different messages. And so the tactics we choose have to be within the same ICP. Again, that's not always defined by industry. But again, we get to choose those. That's where it starts to become exciting. And then the 4th pillar is growth operations. And growth operations is the function of executing growth as a function within the agency. And that's taking everything from the strategy, distilling it down to the project management of this function, which means what are the actions that we need to take? Who are the owners? What are the timelines that are required in order to get these things done? And that's how we go from a strategy that is a much larger, more nebulous, down to the very nuts and bolts, the actions of making this work.
Mm-hmm. I want to go one level deeper than all this, but I have a question that is more of a for my own selfish needs. You talked about finding the tactics that work for your audience. And for Parakeeto, for example, we know where our audience lives, and one of those big places is LinkedIn. So I need to deliver my messaging on LinkedIn, but then you also talked about doing things that resonate for you, that feel natural for you, and so on. And for some reason, personally, just me, I struggle with getting LinkedIn posts out there. Do you do coaching on that kind of, like, what do I do about that? Is that just a discipline thing where I need to sit down and force myself to do it? Is there a skill set that I'm missing? Like, what would you coach someone like me in that kind of situation where you know what the path is, but there's just a disconnect somewhere?
Build a plan. It's, one, have an honest conversation with yourself. It's like, is this something that I can commit to? Because the reality is like, no matter what is on the other side of it, if you're just not going to be able to do it, if you can't do it consistently, if you can't do it authentically, then that's going to come across. And I would much rather you or anyone else show up in the ways, put the energy, like we want the energy to have efficiency. And the only way that we can do that is by being motivated. In order to do the things consistently and for it to resonate, we need to be able to we need to be motivated to do those things. We could go down a different road on that, but as it specifically comes back to LinkedIn, I would say, develop the plan. One of the biggest challenges oftentimes is, that idea of the blank page. We're not knowing how, not having that clarity between the knowing that you need to do it and the why and the how. And when that's developed, then it makes it easier. It's like, hey, we know that, so let me take a step back from there, Carson, to more fully answer your question. We derive our tactics based off of a KPI. The KPI that we talk about as being the primary KPI that agency owners should focus on is conversations. When we've done the math correctly, and this is different than SQLs and MQLs and opportunities, in our model, when we've done the math right, conversations is the KPI that we need to focus on. The number of conversations that we need to have on a month, typically on a monthly basis, to get to the stage that we need to be at based on our business to develop a proposal or a scope of work or whatever it is that we're delivering, to have that convert into one business, and the amount of that one business that we need to get to the goal that we have. And so conversations is the KPI that we're focused on. And out of that, we have the opportunity to apply different tactics. Again, different tactics at different stages of the funnel. So the question, that we would talk through here, Carson, is what stage of the funnel is this tactic linked in? What do we need to get out of that? But then also, what other tactics do we need to have to support that tactic in that function, in that stage of the funnel? Because then we get an idea of what do we need to get out of LinkedIn? Do we need to be posting on LinkedIn every day? Or do we need to be posting on LinkedIn twice a week or once every other week, or whatever, we kind of generally know what we need to get out of LinkedIn. But that's going to dictate the frequency in which we show up. Then out of that, that helps inform the plan, because now it's like, okay, what content do we need? What are our content pillars? What is our audience? And again, there's a lot less ambiguity and oftentimes that emotional weight of like, as well as I do, is like LinkedIn's not hard. I mean, it's oftentimes that emotional weight of like, I was doing something the other day. I was like, the reality is I've been putting this off, but it took me less than 2 minutes to actually do it. It's just like that weight on our shoulders. But having that plan defined really is a key in unlocking the ability to be consistent with a tactic.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna take that away and try to implement some of that. All right. In terms of implementing some of this work, though, for agencies in general, you've got a 3-step process that you work through with agencies. I've personally played around with at least step 1 of this, but walk us through what those 3 steps are for you.
And you're specifically referencing starting with vitals.
Vitals, yeah.
Yep.
Clarity, yeah.
Yep. So we start with vitals because early in the founding of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, I recognized from some of in previous roles, I'm highly opposed to a prescription without a proper diagnosis. And I think that should be true in a lot of areas of our life. I could create a wellness plan for you that doesn't fit, or I could create a financial plan for you that doesn't fit. Blood, Sweat, and Tears wants to be able to prescribe the right solution for an agency based on a proper diagnosis. And in order to do that, we leverage Vitals. So Vitals is our growth readiness assessment. It evaluates 40 variables that impact or indicate an agency's readiness for growth. And that's basically kind of like the blood work. If we want to come back to a prescription and a diagnosis, it's the doctor doing the blood work to be able to determine exactly what's going on. Like, what am I trying to solve for? Because, if you were my prospect or client, Carson, I don't want to just say, hey, and you don't want for me to say, hey, here's the off the shelf thing that you need to buy that works for everybody. Like that doesn't feel authentic. And so we always start with vitals because it tells us what the blood work is. It tells us where the agency's been, where they are now, where they're looking to go. And it gives us data points on a number of indicators that help us understand when we're thinking through, positioning, messaging, tactics, growth operations, profitability, barriers in the past, hurdles that the agencies hit, that like things that haven't worked, things that have worked. It just gives us a lot of insight. So Vitals informs our ability to make a proper recommendation, a proper diagnosis for the agency, to how to move forward.
Mm-hmm. And that's similar to what Parakeeto does with, we call it an assessment, but it's so hard to work on an agency's problem without fully understanding the context behind that. So yeah, like in both cases, I think that's a really critical step. And then you have another step that comes after that, which is you call clarity.
Yep. So most agencies don't want to just know what the problem is. They want to be able to have some sort of impact on the problem, and that's clarity. So clarity is getting in the room for 2 days. It's a 2-day in-person workshop with the agency leadership team and anyone in the agency that is involved in growth. Typically that's anywhere 2 to 5-ish people in the room. We've done one that was like 13 people in the room, but it really should be like the agency leadership team, and it's to get into the room to start to solve the problems. It's to put the plan together and collaboratively work through the issues that Vitals has uncovered. So Vitals directly informs clarity. We have a set of modules that we do that we kind of pull from that are designed to help us move through the common outputs from vitals, as far as what's needed both on the strategic side and the tactical side of being able to have a solid growth strategy for the agency to move from where they are to that state in the future, which is one of the things that we work through and define in Clarity. So we define that state in the future. We go through an exercise called reverse engineering your funnel that helps us get to that KPI of conversations. We work through we talk about positioning and messaging, and then on day 2 we get into it's all tactical, and so we get into the tactics that we need to be able to work through or to be able to move through the funnel to get to that goal. And it's the outputs from Clarity of those 2 days are the growth strategy, a 30, 60, 90 action plan, a stop, start, continue framework, and then like that tactical, what we call the tactical alignment is, which tactics are we committing to in order to move the plan forward.
Cool. I want to back up for 1 second. You said you do a 2-day on-site workshop, like you're flying somewhere to do this workshop. It feels like such a rare thing. I mean, I remember back earlier in my career when we actually traveled and met with clients and stuff, and I loved it. We don't seem to do that much anymore. Everything's over Zoom. So a bit of a side tangent, but like, how much value do you feel there is in that in-person engagement?
Immense. It's my favorite thing that we do, because you feel it in the room. And, it's like, if anyone ever wanted to hire, if somebody was, considering hiring Blood, Sweat, and Tears, I could point them to anyone that's done Clarity. I mean, if they were specifically interested in Clarity, I could point them to anyone, it's like if they were on the cusp of buying Clarity, or, engaging with Clarity, I could point them to, someone else who's done Clarity, and that would immediately push them over the edge, because, you can feel the weight move off of the team as we work through these things. That's like so many other things in life. There's the problems that exist that are weighing you down, that are the barriers for moving forward, and you just don't know how to solve it. Like, that it needs to be addressed, but you don't know how. So you just don't. And you don't for years and years, and it becomes an immense pain. And when we get in the room and we are working, we're collaborating, we're solving together. And again, it's the agency being able to see like, hey, I don't have to know all the answers. This team is here to help steer me. I just have to provide perspective and input and point of view and that sort of thing, goals, ambitions, fears, frustrations. And then I love it. It's if that's what I could spend all my time doing, that's what I would do.
Amazing. Okay, cool. And then after you're done with that, you've got one more step in your process.
And that's impact. Yep. And so impact is coming alongside the agency to help move them through the strategy. Because, if you recall from earlier, I indicated most agencies are missing 2 things. They're missing the strategy and they're missing the resources to move that strategy forward. And have not yet seen an agency, have not yet been engaged with an agency that had either of the 2 things. They might have had parts of both. But, it's again, like, agencies, as we've indicated, are not founded on on growth as expertise. Therefore, the strategy is oftentimes not fully baked. It's not sound, and therefore they haven't built the team or the resources to be able to deliver that type of function. And like we know all the stories, of somebody's tasked with it. They've gone through 6 business development people in the last 6 years. There's a lot of reasons why. But the agency needs a consistent expertise and capacity to be able to move the strategy forward. And oftentimes it's best when that's not owned internally, because what BS&T can't be tasked with is client management, responding to RFPs, preparing pitches, So those things oftentimes get confused when it comes to the growth function. But having a partner that is committed to owning certain parts of the growth function, the execution of the growth function is imperative for most agencies, and that is not a one size fits all. Kind of similar to the diagnosis, it just depends on the agency, what their goals are, and what resources they do actually have. I mean, part of the work that we do in Clarity is understanding, on day 2, it's mapping. It's resource planning. It's mapping the tasks that are required and the capacity required in order to achieve this function. What out of that does the agency have? What to apply? What do they want to have? And how is that best solved? Some agencies are going to have to own it internally. They just don't have the choice. They don't have the profit. They don't have the ability to invest further. Some agencies have the ability to build a team, and we've worked with an agency in which we've brought in multiple sellers to build an entire sales team within the agency, and that's been really fun. So again, it just totally depends on the agency and how what they're trying to achieve and how they can go about it to be able to prescribe the right impact solution to be able to come alongside them in the way that is going to drive the outcomes that they need with the resources they have available.
Do you want some free resources to help you measure and improve your profitability? If you do, then I want to tell you about our agency profitability toolkit, which you can grab absolutely free in the show notes or by heading to parakeeto.com/toolkit. It's packed with training videos, cheat sheets, templates, and all kinds of other great resources to help you start measuring and improving the essential metrics that are going to drive better profitability in your business. And it's helped thousands of other agencies around the world do the same. So I want to encourage you to go and grab a copy of that. And if you'd rather get in the fast lane and just have our team of experts guide you through the process of measuring and improving your profitability, then I want to encourage you to apply for a consultation at parakeeto.com. And with that, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the episode, and I'll let you get back to it.
Do you, what percentage of the clients you work with, the agencies you work with, go through Clarity and then continue to use you with Impact versus saying okay, I got it. I can take the recommendations and run with it?
I mean, it's definitely over 80%. I would be inclined to say probably over 90%. I mean, we've definitely had agencies that have done vitals and Clarity, and then, I mean, it's like the belief is that we're going to do it internally. It's like, I think, from the outset, is people just want the, hey, Eric, tell me the magic bullet, or what's the right keyboard command that I push in that just makes gives us the ability to do all this internally. They want to own it. I think in their heart of hearts, they know that they can't, but they want to try. And so what happens from time to time is somebody will come through, do vitals and Clarity, and they'll say, hey, thanks, guys. This was incredible. We've got it. We're going to take this and run. And then 6 months later, it's kind of like, hey, man, we haven't done anything. Just like you said, this is strategy sitting on a shelf. And again, it's like, you're running, we know how it goes.
Well, I mean, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier. This is not something that most agency owners are pumped to do. It's a task they don't want to do. And certainly the strategy and tactics that you put together will help guide them. But if they don't love it, if they're not intrinsically motivated by it, you're right. It's very difficult to do that on your own and just suddenly go yes, this is my thing now. So having you to be able to support them on that, I think is really critical. I'm impressed if it's 80 to 90%. Even at Parakeeto, we run into the same thing, where we can build out a roadmap and teach them some things and show them what they need to focus on. And quite often they'll be like, okay, cool, I got it now. But having that someone to help guide them down the path and be the execution partner and that kind of thing can be really, really valuable.
Yeah. And, the other thing is Carson, it's not only that they don't want to do it, because most of them generally don't want to do it. They don't have the capacity for it. They have built an organization that is still beholden to them. I mean, you know this. You speak to this more than I can, but they don't have the capacity. They don't have the resource margin to be able to do it consistently. And it's like, everybody. It's like the age old adages of. Everybody, when there's nothing in the pipeline, everybody's scrambling for new business. And then the moment, you win that piece of business, everybody's scrambling to service that piece of business. And then the function stops. And again, like that's what we want to solve against. We're trying to solve against these peaks and valleys of fluctuations of growth. But again, there's just not the resource margin within the agency for anybody to be able to not only do it consistently, but then also to have the expertise in knowing what to do, how, when, why, when to optimize, that sort of thing. So it's the other thing I was going to say about that though is the part about not wanting to do it, that does change when we are able to align on tactics that are really actually exciting and invigorating and fun to show up for. But again, the number of agencies that we've put this plan together for, and then when left to them, they just don't execute because they don't actually have the capacity, or even when we're coming alongside of them to help them, they're putting tactics on the board that they're going to do that don't get done. And it's not because they don't have the ambition to do it. It's not because they just all of a sudden don't care. It's like they legitimately just don't have the margin outside of still being deeply, deeply involved in client work and then trying to run a business.
Yeah, for sure. Let's poke at some of this stuff here because, like I said at the very beginning, one of the things we hear a lot is, the pipeline's not there. We're in trouble. It's almost like emergency mode rather than growth. And so I want to understand how you distinguish between that. You use the word growth a lot, which to me is a very conscious decision. Like we're at point A and we want to move to point B. That's growth. As opposed to we were at point A and now our pipeline is dried up and we don't have enough work for the team and we're kind of scrambling. Is that still part of the what your system helps with? Or is that a whole different problem?
Well, I'm not sure if this is the answer to your question, but I think it's something you'll appreciate. We actually want to reframe the very nebulous term growth, kind of as you've pointed at, to talking about enterprise value. And the reason we want to talk about enterprise value is because it's a metric. It's a measure of the health of your business, and there are specific variables and market considerations that impact what enterprise value is. And Carson, if we move from a conversation about growth, which is typically, to your point, we need more leads to get more sales, to a conversation about enterprise value, now we're in a totally different galaxy. And we are actually talking about fundamentally impacting the health of an organization and the lives of the ownership group, and the lives of everyone within the organization, because now it's not just this like urgency for it's not an urgency for pipeline and more sales. It's an interconnected function of the health. I mean, it's like the body. It's like we don't just talk about diet. We talk about diet and movement and sleep and emotional well-being, like all of the things, because they're all interconnected. And so, I'll pause there because, again, I know that's a little bit different than the question you asked, and there's a lot more complexity to that. But the clients that we want to spend our time deeply involved with are those agencies that care about enterprise value, that they know that it's not just about more revenue, but it is the addressing the interconnected functions and variables that they're impacting the health and wealth of their business.
Yeah. And for sure, that's all really valuable. And I think about agency owners who are struggling with their pipeline. Nothing else matters, and it's not fun. And it's stressful. And so, yeah, when you talk about like the overall holistic well-being of people, it sounds strange to me when I say it out loud, but like having this function in a healthy place changes all of that dramatically. Like I don't have to worry about where my next piece of work is coming from, and I know my team is going to have work to do, all that sort of thing. Like stress levels come down, sleep better at night, all that sort of thing. Like there's a whole psychological well-being component to this that we don't always talk about when we're focused on numbers. But the thing I want to try to articulate, and I'll do it in a slightly different way, is the idea of growth. So if you think about numbers, if I'm at 1 million, I want to grow to 2 million, to 5 million, whatever. And I've certainly, working with agencies that have that plan in front of them. But I also have a lot of agencies that are $1 million company with $800,000 of revenue lined up. They're not thinking about going from 1 to 2 million. They just want to get back the 1 million that they were at so that their team is busy enough and so on. Are you still defining that as growth? And do the tactics that you work through work in that kind of environment, or do you need to be more stable first?
Well, when we talk about strategy, again, we said earlier that everything starts with strategy. When we're defining where the agency is now and where they want to go, there's typically one of 4 strategies that we're applying to their situation. It's stabilize, sustain, scale, or sell. And the sell is not only it works because it's an S, but it's not only selling. It could be it's really transaction. So are we growing, or are we targeting some sort of transaction? That might be acquisition, acqui-hire, or something along those lines. But again, it's stabilize, sustain, scale, or sell. And therefore, where you are now, where you're looking to go, the resources that you have available, that timeline is a heavy dictator of the type of strategy that we're going to put in place. Because a stabilized agency, and I think this is to your point, an agency that's in a stabilized mode that just lost a $2 million piece of business and needs to recoup something is in a very different position than an agency that wants to scale, that they've had consistent year over year growth. They're consistently winning business, but they want to optimize. They want to see how far they can take it. And so again, the way that we look at that is different, because we don't have the runway to apply a set of tactics that might take 9 to 12 months to develop for an agency that needs to stabilize.
Yeah, earlier when you talked about like a 3-year plan, I was like, oh, there's some agencies that I'm working with that do not have a 3-year runway in front of them to figure stuff out. They've got like 6 months to figure stuff out. So yeah, that stabilized model seems to make a lot of sense for them. Another situation that I wanted to throw at you, and specifically because you're talking to Parakeeto here, and we think about things in terms of profitability and margins and that kind of thing. There are going to be situations where an agency is struggling, not necessarily because they don't have enough work coming in, but because the way that they're working is not efficient. They don't have the margins built in. And essentially, if they try to go into growth mode, they're just going to scale losses. They're going to be taking an inefficient system and just adding fuel to that. What do you do when you run into a situation like that?
Call you.
Okay, perfect.
No, and that was part of the reason why you and I kind of got reconnected, is because we run into those situations often, and we're able to diagnose that pretty early on in vitals. And as we're planning, as we're developing our growth strategy, we need to know that. And unfortunately, and I'm sure you can speak to again more than I can, there, there's an unfortunate number of agencies that just don't have that visibility because they haven't put in the systems and done the work to be able to have those numbers in front of them or even available. And so when we're doing our audit, when we're doing our growth readiness assessment, we want to know what industries, what capabilities, what teams have what amounts of margin, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to build a growth strategy targeting functions that are not profitable. And we've all heard the stories. We all have the scenarios. We've all probably, even in our own business, gone after a piece of business or said yes to something that we didn't know how much margin was in it, but we needed the revenue. Revenue is, it can be a distraction at times because, it could be an appealing number, but the number within the number is oftentimes razor thin. And so we need to know that, because we are not going to put forth the work. We're not going to make an ignorant recommendation to the best of our abilities to build a pipeline for our clients that has little to no margin in it. And so when we bring in you or your team to conduct that assessment, then we now collectively have more information to make those decisions on. And it's not only who are we targeting, but to your point earlier, it's like, how are we working? And how do we continue to optimize? Again, like, this is the difference between an agency that is scrambling to resolve an empty pipeline to an agency that actually cares more about enterprise value, because they say, like, hey, like, this is probably going to take some work. Like, we're going to have to change some behaviors. We're going to have to implement new systems. We're going to have to not do the things that were comfortable but unhealthy for us, and make some changes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I mean, I didn't seed that question for you to give a plug to Parakeeto, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's the truth, because it's not our natural expertise, but it is imperative for the plans that we build for the reasons I articulated.
Yep. Okay, cool. That's everything I wanted to cover. And I just want to say thanks. I mean, you give me some personal advice on this. Thank you very much. But I just think also for the agencies listening to be able to understand, like, what they need to do in order to deal with some of their issues around pipeline and new business, and how you can help. So maybe we'll end with that. If someone has listened to this and they think, I need to talk to Blood, Sweat, and Tears, how do they reach you? What are the next steps for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Shoot me an email, Eric, ERIC, at Blood, Sweat, and Tears, all spelled out, .co. You can find me on LinkedIn. Go to bloodsweatandtears.co. You've got direct access to our pulse check, which you can take there, which is the lighter version of our vitals. Vitals takes about 15 minutes to complete. Pulse check takes about 3. Some people want to start there. But reach out to Carson, ask him for my number. You can text me, however you want to do it. And honestly, Carson, and I've told you this before, I'm always happy to have a conversation. Me and my team are genuinely passionate about helping agencies resolve this. The goal is not for you to hire Blood, Sweat, and Tears or to move into some sort of engagement. The goal is for you, as an agency owner or leader, to better understand the situation you're in and figure out what proactive steps that you can and should take for your specific scenario. And if that's moving in a different direction or another partner or hiring internally, I'm always happy to have the conversation and provide my perspective and let you make the decisions that are best for you and your org.
Amazing. And that's, part of the reason that I like working with you is that attitude. Like, we like to partner with other consultants and so on that are just looking for the best interests of agencies, and you fit right into that perfectly. Okay. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate your time. And thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Carson.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've ever found yourself thinking, man, I get so much value from this podcast, I wish there was something I could do to return the favor. Well, today's your lucky day because you can leave us a review wherever you're listening to this, and it is incredibly helpful. Of course, if you haven't grabbed a free copy of the Agency Profit Toolkit, go and get that. It's got tons of free resources to help you improve your profitability. If you're looking to get in the fast lane and get help from experts to improve your profitability and measure your most important metrics, then apply for a consultation at Parakeeto.com. We'd love to chat with you and figure out how we can help. With all of that, thank you so much for being a listener, and we will see you on the next episode.